You're 20 years old, maybe younger, and right now life feels like a weight you can't carry. The walls are closing in. The future looks like nothing but more pain. But here's what nobody tells you. You've only lived 1/4 of your life. You haven't met 99% of the people who will matter to you. There are friends you haven't made, places you haven't seen, a version of yourself you can't even imagine yet. Hold on, just hold on, because the ancient philosophers understood something that takes decades to learn. As Seneca wrote 2,000 years ago, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Today, we unlock the wisdom that will carry you through the darkest nights. Wisdom that transformed emperors, survived death camps, and still echoes through time. The 25% truth. Here's a number that should shake you awake. If you're under 20, you've only experienced 25% of your existence. Think about that. 3/4 of your entire life hasn't happened yet. 75%. That's not optimism. That's mathematics. When you feel like you've seen everything, experienced everything, been through too much, you're looking at a fraction of the story. The ancient Stoics called this temporal blindness. We judge our entire existence by the chapter we're reading right now. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who ruled Rome, wrote in his private journal about this exact delusion. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. He understood that the mind plays tricks. It takes current suffering and projects it infinitely forward. But that projection is a lie. Your worst day is not your everyday. The person you are at 20 is not the person you'll be at 40, at 60, at 80. And this leads us to something the Stoics understood deeply. The 1%. There are 8 billion people on this planet. 8 billion. And you've met maybe a few thousand. Do the math. That's less than 1%. The best friend who will understand you completely. You might meet them next year. The mentor who will change your trajectory. They could be in the next city. The love that will make everything make sense. They exist right now somewhere, living their life, waiting for the universe to cross your paths. The Stoics believed in what they called the cosmopolis, the idea that we're all citizens of one great city. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of history's greatest teachers, said something profound about human connection. We are all fellow citizens of the world. If this truth is resonating with you, hit like and subscribe to unlock more wisdom from the vault, because what comes next might change how you see your entire future. Billions waiting to meet you. Your tribe exists. You just haven't found them yet. But here's what makes this even more powerful. The future self. Close your eyes for a moment. Try to imagine yourself at 60 years old. You can't do it, can you? The person you'll become doesn't exist in your mind yet. That version of you, with all their wisdom, all their experiences, all their stories of survival, is completely invisible to your current self. Psychology calls this the end of history illusion. We always underestimate how much will change. Think back 5 years. Were you the same person? Of course not. You've already become someone you couldn't imagine. The transformation doesn't stop. It accelerates. Viktor Frankl, who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, discovered something remarkable about human potential. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Change is inevitable, growth is optional. The future you might be someone who looks back at this moment as the turning point. The moment you decided to hold on. And speaking of holding on, the Stoic secret. 2,000 years ago, a slave named Epictetus discovered something that freed him more completely than any key ever could. Perspective, not your circumstances, not your pain, not your past. Your perspective is everything. The Stoics taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca, who advised emperors and faced his own execution with calm, wrote letters to his friend Lucilius about this very truth. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about what keeps you up at night. How much of it is happening right now, in this moment? And how much is your mind creating nightmares from possibilities? The present moment is usually bearable. It's the weight of imagined futures that crushes us. The Stoics didn't practice denial. They practiced presence. Here now, this moment, breathe. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that today's troubles are today's troubles. Tomorrow hasn't happened yet. But this leads us to an even deeper truth: the gift of life. Here's something that might sound strange when you're suffering. Life itself is the gift, not happiness, not success, not even peace. The mere fact of being alive, of experiencing anything at all, is statistically miraculous. The odds of you existing are approximately 1 in 400 trillion. That's not poetry. That's probability. Every philosopher who ever grappled with suffering eventually came back to this fundamental truth. Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life. You don't have to love every moment of your life. The Stoics never asked that of anyone. What they asked was this: recognize what you have. The alternative to suffering is not peace. The alternative to living is nothing at all. Existence itself is the privilege. Viktor Frankl watched people die around him in Auschwitz, and he noticed something extraordinary. Those who survived weren't the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who found meaning, which brings us to the next revelation: meaning in darkness. In the darkest place humanity ever created, Viktor Frankl made the most important psychological discovery of the 20th century. Meaning, not happiness, meaning. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Frankl watched this truth play out in the concentration camps. People didn't survive because their suffering was less. They survived because their suffering had purpose. Purpose transforms pain into power. This isn't about positive thinking or denial. This is about finding the thread that pulls you forward. Maybe it's someone who needs you. Maybe it's something you haven't created yet. Maybe it's simply the determination to prove that darkness doesn't win. Your suffering can become your strength. Frankl called this logotherapy, healing through meaning. And here's what he discovered: meaning doesn't come to you. You must create it. You must choose it. Even in hell, especially in hell, meaning is a decision. But there's something even the Stoics feared: the final day. Picture this. You're 90 years old. You've lived a full life with all its struggles, all its joys, all its transformations. You're surrounded by people who love you. And in that moment, what would you give for one more day? Just one more day of this life you once wanted to end. Let us prepare our minds, as if we'd come to the very end of life. The Stoics practiced memento mori, remembering death, not to be morbid but to be awake. When you remember that all of this ends, every moment becomes precious. Even the painful ones, because pain means you're still here. Pain means the story isn't over. One day you will desperately want what you have right now. Time, breath, heartbeat, treasure. The person at the end of a long life doesn't regret the hard days. They regret the days they didn't fully live. And this brings us to the most important question: the waste of time. Seneca wrote something 2,000 years ago that hits differently when you're in pain. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Waste, the greatest tragedy, isn't a life of suffering. It's a life unlived. It's potential unrealized. It's the books unwritten, the connections unmade, the future self that never got the chance to exist. Don't waste your one life. Seneca wasn't talking about productivity hacks. He was talking about presence, about actually being here for your own existence, about not letting fear and pain steal years that could have been spent growing, connecting, becoming. The time you have is the time you use. Every moment spent wishing for an end is a moment not spent building a beginning. The Stoics would tell you this. You are squandering the very thing that dying people would kill for: time, breath, possibility. But there's one more truth you need to hear. Hold on. The philosopher Albert Camus wrote that we must imagine Sisyphus happy. You know the myth. A man condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down, over and over, forever. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. Sounds like life, doesn't it? The endless push against gravity, the weight that never fully lifts. But Camus saw something in that struggle that changes everything. The struggle itself is the meaning. The push is the purpose. The resistance is what makes you strong. Every moment you hold on, you become stronger. Hold on one more day, not because it gets easier, but because you get more capable. The person who survives this darkness will have a power that those who never suffered can't imagine, and that power is coming. But you have to be here to claim it. The ancient promise. The Stoics made a promise that has survived 2,000 years. This too shall pass. Not because suffering isn't real. It is. Not because your pain doesn't matter. It does. But because nothing in this universe is permanent. Not empires, not mountains, not pain. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the most powerful empire in human history, reminded himself every day of this truth. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. This shall pass, hold on. The insanity is believing that how you feel right now is how you'll feel forever. The wisdom is knowing that you're in the middle of a chapter, not at the end of the book. Your story is not finished yet. The pages ahead hold things you cannot imagine. Hold on. You came here because life feels unbearable. And I won't pretend that watching a video erases that weight. But here's what I know. What stands in the way becomes the way. You've only lived a quarter of your life. You've only met a fraction of the people who will matter. The future version of yourself, the one who survived this, who grew from this, who built something beautiful from this darkness. That person exists. But only if you stay. Stay for the unwritten chapters. One day at the end of a long life, you'll want nothing more than one more day of this existence you're struggling through right now. The Stoics understood. Life is the gift, not because it's easy, because it's everything. Hold on to it because nothing matters more. If you made it this far, comment still here to prove that you're among those who chose to stay. The wisdom of the ages is yours. Use it well. If this unlocked something in you, subscribe for more. The vault has more wisdom waiting.